Hello and welcome back to the Analyst by Vajiram and Ravi, dated 18th January 2025. Today again we will be discussing some important topics that has appeared in today's The Hindu and The Indian Express newspapers, which are very relevant for your exam. In our first topic, we'll look into some basics of GDP. Then we'll try to look into various aspects of India's real GDP growth rate and the forecast for upcoming year. Then in our second topic, we'll try to analyze an important topic, that is rising urban waste in India and what are the possible reasons and some solutions of the same. Then in our simplified section, we'll take up 5 articles and we will try to explain them in simplest language possible to enrich your understanding of the newspapers. Additionally, we have also incorporated some prelims pointers, which is going to be very important for your upcoming prelims 2025 exam. So have a look on them also and stay tuned. So our first topic is India's real growth rate and forecast. The context of this topic is that a write-up has appeared discussing the various aspects of GDP growth rate, particularly for the upcoming financial year. This particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 3, planning, mobilization of resources, fiscal policy, monetary policy, etc. And this particular editorial has been written by none other than Mr. C. Rangarajan, who has been the former governor of Reserve Bank of India, and he was also associated with various other arenas of Indian economy. For example, he recommended the poverty levels in India, and this recommendation was done after a committee that was set up under Mr. C. Rangarajan to recommend the poverty levels in India. And as per the recommendations of this committee, as per the data of this committee, the poverty rate in year 2011-12 was 29.5%. Apart from Mr. C. Rangarajan, Mr. D.K. Srivastava has also contributed to this editorial, who is a professor and also associated with the Finance Commission. Before looking into the various details that has been provided in this editorial, to understand this editorial better, we'll have to look into some basics. For example, what is GDP? What is real GDP, nominal GDP? What is gross fixed capital formations, etc. So let's look into the GDP first. GDP is the total monetary value of all the goods and services that are produced in a domestic territory during a financial year. Monetary value means, total monetary value means all the value which has been paid by the ultimate consumers, which includes the cost of production as well as taxes, and it deducts the intermediate goods which has been consumed in the process itself. Then the domestic territory, which includes all the states, union territories, territorial waters which extend up to 12 nautical miles from the baseline. Okay, and it is calculated generally for a year. Then the real GDP and the nominal GDP. Real GDP is generally calculated at a constant price which is adjusted for the inflation, whereas the nominal GDP is calculated at the current price which is not adjusted for the inflation. What does it mean? Let's try to understand with a very basic example. Okay, all of you loves chocolate, and especially during a particular day of month of February, okay, there is an increased demand of the chocolates. So let's try to understand this with an example of the chocolate. Let's suppose there is a country which is producing chocolates like this. Okay, let's suppose in particular year 2023, the chocolates that was produced was 10 and the cost of each chocolate was 100 rupees. So to calculate GDP, we will multiply the price with the units that were produced in that economy, and there is nothing else that is being produced in that economy. People are sustaining only by eating the chocolates. So the real GDP here will be 1000, that is 10 into 100, and the nominal GDP also will be 10 into 100, that is 1000. But let's suppose we have taken 2023 as the base year. Base year means this is the year from which we'll take the prices, which will be constant for calculating the GDP, especially the real GDP. Now let's suppose in the year 2024, instead of 10 chocolates being produced because of the increased demand, let's suppose the country produced 20 chocolates. But the cost of each chocolate also increased. Let's suppose because of the other factors like the increase in the cost of raw materials, increase in transportation cost, or increase in the wages of the workers, etc. The cost of each chocolate increased to 200 rupees. So the real GDP will be here 20 into 100 only. Means this is the constant price which is chosen by a base year. That is base year 2023 when price was 100 only. So the real GDP will be 2000. But the nominal GDP will be calculated at the current price which will be not adjusted for the inflation. So the nominal GDP will be 20 into 200, that is 4000 rupees. This is the basic difference between the real GDP and the nominal GDP. So as per the first advance estimates, okay, which are generally the preliminary estimates of a country's economic performance for a given financial year. And this first advance estimates of national accounts, which is released by the National Statistical Office, which is under the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation for 24-25, real GDP growth rate was 6.44% and the nominal GDP growth rate was 9.7%, which is marginally lower than the RBI's revised growth estimate, which they have done in the December 2024 under their monetary policy statement, which said that the real GDP growth rate will be around 6.6% and the nominal GDP growth rate will be 10.5%. So what has been the possible issues or possible reasons why we have seen a slump in this GDP growth? Before looking into that, let's try to understand what are the different GDP calculation methodology. Okay, so GDP can be calculated based on the three methods. One is the value added method, another is the income method, and another is the expenditure method. For example, let's suppose this is a chocolate which is being produced. So for the production of this chocolate, the first important ingredient which is needed is the cocoa or cocoa powder, which will be taken from any farmer. Let's suppose this is a farmer A which sold this cocoa at a price of 100 rupees to this manufacturing company which is producing this particular chocolate. Now let's suppose this manufacturing company use this cocoa. They have processed this particular cocoa, they have added further other ingredients, and now they are selling this particular chocolate in the market at a cost of 500 rupees. So the value addition which happened at this particular stage from farmer to the manufacturing facility is 100 rupees. Similarly, from manufacturing facility to ultimate consumer or to the ultimate market, what is the value addition which happened? It is actually the 400. Because from the final price of the goods or services or from the final value of goods and services, we'll have to deduct the initial cost or the cost of inputs to get the value addition in the subsequent chains or in the subsequent levels. So here the value addition was 100 rupees, then we had the value addition 400 rupees. So if let's suppose there was only two stages of the production itself, okay, so here the GDP will be 500 rupees. And in this 500, we have included all the cost of production, and we have also included the taxes that has been paid, and we have deducted the subsidies that has been provided. So value of all the goods and services which is produced in a country during a specific period means it will add all the value added which is having at each stage of production for all the economic activities that are happening in any economy for all the sectors. Then we can get the GDP by this value addition method, which is also called as the output approach, means adding all the outputs which is happening at each stage of production. Then we have the income method, which is actually total income earned by all the factors of production within a country during a specific period. What are factors of production? These are the components which are needed to ensure that production happens. For example, let's suppose tomorrow Mr. Adani wants that they will produce the Tesla-like cars in India itself. So this risk-taking ability of Mr. Adani or new vision is the entrepreneurship. That is the first factor of production. That is the entrepreneurship. Then Mr. Adani will see some land, okay, which he will buy, where he can set up his manufacturing plant, which can actually produce these kind of cars in India. So land is the second factor of production. Third, he will need capital or money to ensure that he pay money for that land, to ensure he can buy proper machineries from which the production can actually happen. Then another will be the labor, which is the efforts and the abilities of the people who will be working in that particular manufacturing company. And with the help of these workers and with the use of that capital which has been provided, the final product will finally come into the market. So these are the 4 factors of production. Okay. For labor, they will be taking wages, which is the first income. For the capital, the entrepreneur or the owners of the company will have to pay interest regularly. For the land, they have to pay rent regularly, and entrepreneurs will be taking profits for their risk-taking ability. And when we will add all these incomes, that is wages, rents, interest plus profits, we can get the GDP by this income approach. And another is the expenditure approach, which is the total spending on all final goods and services which is produced within a country during a specific period. For example, here there are 4 components of the GDP under the expenditure approach. One is the consumption expenditure, that is household consumption expenditure, whatever the expenditure which is being done by me and you. For example, what we are paying for the Swiggy and Zomato, what we are paying for watching movies, etc. Or whatever the amount you paid as a fee in this particular institute to take the benefits of the coaching. All that is part of household consumption expenditure. Then another is the investment. Okay, whatever the investment expenditure which is being done by the privates for investing in the economy, which can actually help in increased production of the goods and services. Then you have the government spending, which includes the government expenditure as well as the investment in the economy. Government expenditure includes all the money that is being paid by the government, for example, for the salaries of the employees. Tomorrow you'll become IAS or IPS. Whatever the money government will be giving as a salary to you, that is part of government spending. Then government will also be investing in the economy, for example, for infrastructure building, roads, bridges, etc. Then the net of exports, that is the export minus imports. That is when we will add all these components, we can get the GDP by this expenditure approach. So what the editorial is saying, that because what are the reason why we have seen this below par GDP growth rate is because of the fact that the GVA manufacturing, what we have seen, that value addition for all the economic activities for all the sectors. Manufacturing sector is one such sector. Here we have seen 9.9% growth in 23-24, but 5.3% growth, only 5.3% in 24-25. And because of this decline in the GVA of the manufacturing, there has been impact on the overall GDP growth rate. Why we have seen a decline in GVA of manufacturing sector? There are a number of reasons which we'll also discuss at the later part of the discussion. Then the editorial talks about the growth prospects for 25-26. It says that the gross fixed capital formation rate at constant price was 33.3% and 33.5% during 21-22 to 24-25. Okay, gross fixed capital formation or GFCF can be defined as whatever the investment that has been done in the fixed assets. Fixed asset means, for example, the factories, for equipments, etc. So the writers are saying that the rate of GFCF means whatever the investment in the fixed capitals that is happening, that has increased for more than 33%. And even if it will be at a rate of 33.4%, it will lead to India's towards the growth rate of 6.5%. Okay, but apart from this gross fixed capital formation, another thing that is required is the incremental capital output ratio, which has been marginally higher than 5 in the recent years. And if it will be at a rate of at least 5.1, even then we can achieve this 6.5% of GDP growth rate. What is this incremental capital output ratio, ICOR? Means what is the additional investment that is required to increase or to lead 1 unit of extra production. Means what is the investment or what is the capital that is required for additional unit of production or for increased GDP growth rate. For example, let's suppose there is a country where there is a very low ICOR and there is a country where there is a very high ICOR. Means this particular country is at a better position, because this needs low income, low capital to have that extra 1 unit of production, whereas this particular country, second country, needs 5 rupees to have that extra unit of production. Means high ICOR is showing that the productivity is lower. Okay, so even if we'll have this at a 5.1, then we can have this 6.5% of growth rate. Also other factors, for example, decline in the government capital expenditure. Okay, this was one of the components here. You have seen that government spending, we have the government's expenditure as well as whatever the government investment is happening. Here the capital expenditure, especially the investments, etc. In the first 8 months, it was only rupees 5.14 lakh crore, which was 46% of the budget target of the previous year. And so if government will not focus on this, if the capex will not be ensured properly, I think the writers are also saying on the same point that it will be little difficult for us to be on the this 6.5% GDP growth rate line. Also, some of the other factors, that in US the president is changing, but the writers are saying that it will not have much impact, because India's domestic demand is one of the major drivers of the India's GDP growth rate, and this consumption expenditure, that is the demand by the households, that is one of the important component of India's GDP growth rate. So when we will have a robust domestic demand, the external factors will have a less impact on our GDP growth, right? So in this domestic demand, what are the factors that are influencing this domestic demand? First is the inflation in the economy. How is it? Okay, if inflation is not in the tolerable limit, obviously people will not be able to buy the goods and services. Then the wage growth of the people, whether people have jobs, whether they are earning well, that will also be determining what will be the case of the domestic demand, etc. So what has been the overall challenges in the sustained GDP growth rate? The first is the low investment in the economy. The gross fixed capital formation as a percentage of GDP is declining. For example, it was 34.6% in 2011-12 to 29.2% in 2021-22 as per the CMIE. But in the past years, what we have seen that it has marginally increased to 33%, around 33%. But it is still lower if we compare it with some of the developed countries like US, etc. Then the high unemployment. Okay, the unemployment rate, when it is very high, people will not have money to buy, and when they will not have money to buy, obviously the domestic demand will be hampered, and that will further impact the GDP growth rate. For example, as per the periodic labor force survey, the unemployment rate was 7.4% in 21-22, which shows that still there is need for more employment opportunities in India. Then the inequality that is there, because when we'll have a high inequality, it will limit the domestic demand and hinder the inclusive growth. For example, as per the data from World Inequality Report, 22.6% of national income went to just top 1% of people in the year 22-23. When we'll have such a high rate of inequality in India, what will be the case? People will not have money to buy, because most of the wealth, most of the income will already be cornered by few individuals. Only a limited set of people will be holding the most of the amounts. So it would be very difficult for people to fulfill their basic needs or to demand goods and services in the economy, because they do not have money to buy that. Then the distorted consumption patterns. For example, the low agricultural income, which is being impacted by various climate change related issues. For example, cases of droughts are increasing manifold in recent years, and cases of incessant rainfalls are also increasing. And when we have such a low investment in the cold storage facilities, in the infrastructure facilities, especially the perishable items like onions, like tomatoes, etc., they gets impacted. For example, in the month of September 2024, the cost of tomatoes increased. It went past rupees 100 per kg. Why? Because of increased rainfall in the month of September months, where the tomatoes couldn't reach the mandi properly, and there has been lot of loss to the farmers because of the perishable nature of the tomatoes. They got rotten, etc. So when we have already low productivity and lack of proper facilities, lack of proper inputs with the farmers, and that is when that is again being fueled by the climate change, that is leading to low agricultural income, and then the rural demand is declining. And then the high food inflation, which is the another major factor, and in this case this high food inflation has majorly impacted the urban demand. Okay, what happened? Let's suppose there is this chocolate which costs, let's suppose, 100 rupees. Few years back the cost of this chocolate was 80-85 rupees only. Now let's suppose if my income is only 100 rupees, and at that point of time 85 rupees I was giving for this particular chocolate, and 15 rupees I was giving to the auto person who was bringing me to that shop from my home. At this point of time, when the cost of this chocolate has increased to 100 rupees, okay, I will not be able to afford, or I may not demand this chocolate, and I will look for some other alternatives. This is the similar case that is happening with the high food inflation. When the food inflation is very high, the people's real GDP growth rate, the real wage growth rate hasn't happened very properly, and which has actually impacted their buying capacity or purchasing power, and it has led to weak urban demand also. And when we have a weak rural demand as well as weak urban demand because of the high food inflation, it will obviously impact the production of the goods and services, because when people are not demanding, why will companies produce? And when companies will stop producing, obviously we'll see a slump in the GDP growth. Or if the demand is declining, again we can see that consumption expenditure is declining, again it will lead to GDP slump. Whatever we are discussing is all related to this particular method itself, that if any of these component is getting impacted, that is consumption expenditure or the investment in the economy or the government spending or the government expenditure on the investment, if any of this is getting impacted, we'll see a decline in the GDP growth rate. Also, you can see that this is the data that real wage growth, that salary increase minus inflation. Let's suppose at that point of time when my salary was 100 rupees and I was able to afford this chocolate at 85 rupees, and if because of the increased inflation the cost increased to 100 rupees, but if similar case is happening that the wage growth rate, my salary increases to 130 rupees or 140 rupees, then again I will be able to afford this chocolate. But that is not happening in the economy, that the rate of inflation is not in sync with the rate of wage growth, that at what rate inflation is growing, the people's wages are not increasing. And when people's wages are not increasing in sync with the inflation that is in the economy, then people will not be able to buy and the goods and services, and that will lead to a decrease in the demand of the goods and services. Other challenges are external sector vulnerabilities. For example, dependence on the global trade and the capital flows, especially, for example, what we are witnessing in last few months is that lot of selling are happening by the foreign institutional investors who constitute a major chunk of investment in Indian economy. So when they are selling and they are leaving India, that is led to a decline in the capital market, and this capital of FIIs constitute an important part in our business cycle, because whatever the capital they are bringing, that is being used for further increase in the production of the goods and services. And when they are selling and they are leaving India, obviously the companies will face issues in availability of the capital. Apart from that, whatever the supply chain disruptions that happens, whether the Russia-Ukraine war happened, whether the Israel-Hamas issue happened, when we are in a globalized world, when we are interdependent, obviously these external shocks will be impacting the production, and that will lead to a slump in the GDP growth rate. For example, the current account deficit has been widening in the recent years. However, it improved in the Q4 of the financial year 24. What is current account deficit? Okay, whenever we talk about the balance of payment, there are two components. One is the current account and another is the capital account. Under the current account, we have the trade in visibles, that is trade in goods and services. Then we have the trade in invisibles, that is trade in services, etc. that is happening. When we have increased import of goods and services and we have a low exports that is happening, obviously it means that we are paying from our home itself. At that case, we are having a deficit, means our exports are not in sync with the imports. Imports are much larger as compared to the exports that are happening. Then the infrastructure gaps, for inadequate infrastructure is there, that is power availability, transportation, and the logistics, which hampers the economic activities as well as competitiveness of the economy. For example, why we are not able to bridge the current account deficit? Because of the fact we have a high cost of production, because we have a high, the companies are paying a higher cost for the powers, companies are paying high cost for the transportation, because it takes a lot of time in the transportation itself. When our products will be costly, it means that our products will not be competitive at the global level and the countries will not be demanding our products. And in that case, obviously, when our products are not being demanded, we have a lower exports or the slow export growth rate, and that will further widen the current account deficit. Okay, and if you look into this logistic performance index, which is released by the World Bank, India's position has improved to 38 out of 139 countries, but still there is scope of improvement in the logistics sector, especially on the area of the logistics performance. So what are the possible solutions that should be done? Okay, we need to revitalize the investment cycles. That we have to understand that whenever there is a case of recession or economy is going into recessionary tendency, then government will have to buckle up, they will have to go for the expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, now in this case, that whatever the cycle that is coming in the economy, until and unless the fiscal policy and the monetary policy will not be in sync with the demand or with the economic cycle, then the GDP growth will be impacted. For example, what we have seen that we had a very high inflation, but apart from that, the rural as well as the urban demand was not very sound. In that case, what we can say that, so until and unless we'll understand that it is very important to ensure that there is a sync between the conditions of the economy and the policies of the government as well as RBI, it would be very difficult to be on a path of sustained GDP growth rate. Also, we need to enhance the employability and we need to foster the entrepreneurship, that people take risk. Okay, that entrepreneurship is lacking in Indian youth. Second is that as of now, there is a skill mismatch. The demand of industry is altogether different, whereas whatever the skill sets we have with our workers is altogether different. For example, the demand of the industry is artificial intelligence, machine learning, whereas the youths are having only the absolute level of the skill sets which are not required at this point of time by the industry. So obviously they will not find employment. So we have to go for a proper skill census, okay, which has been again recommended by the Chief Minister of the Andhra Pradesh, so that we can map the skills of the youth properly, and based on that we can provide proper employability, as well as there is need for fostering entrepreneurship from the school level or the college level itself, so that these youths can take that risk and can actually contribute to India's growth story. Also, we need to strengthen the agricultural productivity and rural infrastructure. For that, we need more private investment in the agricultural sector, so that the productivity, that is whatever the per hectare production that is happening, which is much lower as compared to the developed countries and some of the countries like Brazil, etc., that can be improved. And how that can happen with the help of better inputs, that we are providing them with high yielding variety seeds. We are providing them the irrigation or the power subsidies, etc., properly. And when we will have an improved productivity, agricultural productivity, and that will also help us in improving the rural demand, and that will again improve our GDP growth rate. Also, we need to diversify exports and attract foreign direct investment, because that can actually help us in getting more capital which can be further infused in the economy, as well as that can also bridge the current account deficit. Also, it can help in promoting we need to promote the inclusive growth, and we need to reduce the inequality, high wealth inequality that is there in the economy, because until and unless that wealth inequality will be bridged properly, people will not have money to buy goods and services, and demand will not further improve, which will further impact the GDP growth rate. So in this particular discussion, we have discussed few topics like GDP, real GDP, nominal GDP, GDP calculation methodology, gross fixed capital formation, that is the whatever the amount that is being invested in the fixed capital like machineries, etc. Then incremental capital output ratio, that what is the extra amount that is required for increased in 1 unit of production. Okay. And then we have seen some of the challenges in the sustained GDP growth rate and some possible solution. Now a mains practice question that is from this particular topic is this, that you people can write. Another thing, that if there is someone who still couldn't understand the incremental capital output ratio. Okay, let's try to take a very basic example. Let's suppose there are two persons, A and B, and they both came for UPSC preparation here itself in Delhi. And this A person, he or she, okay, made a friend C, and now this A and C are thinking that it is high time to explore the streets of Delhi. We need to visit all the places in Delhi, because it is not important as of now to prepare for the prelims 2025 exam, but it is much more important to visit the streets of Delhi to look into various monuments, etc. Now these two people are just roaming around, they are traveling and they are enjoying the life of Delhi. But this person B, who came to Delhi with full dedication, and he have this clarity in mind that he will give this 1 year of complete dedicated preparation for this examination, and he will or she will clear this exam in the first attempt itself, and then he or she will go home. At this point of time, this person B, who have covered all the classes properly, he or she who has taken all the classes properly, done proper revision, proper answer writing practice, he or she has solved all the MCQs properly. At this point of time, he will need, or he or she will take less efforts in covering the content again and again, or revising the content again and again. Okay. Or he or she will take less efforts in improving their marks in the test that will happen. Whereas these two persons who couldn't cover the classes properly, who couldn't revise the things properly, even they have not made notes properly, at this point of time, they will need more efforts for revision of the content that is needed to be prepared before the prelims 2025. Or they will need more efforts to improve their marks in the prelims mock test that is happening. So they will need more effort. So you can say their incremental capital output ratio, or the efforts that they will take, will be much higher as compared to this person B, whose efforts will be less. He or she will take less efforts in improving their revision cycle, improving their content coverage, improving their prelims mock test marks. Okay, that was all from this first topic. So our second topic is issue of urban waste management. The context of this topic is that Supreme Court on Friday questioned both the center as well as Municipal Corporation of Delhi, especially with regard to the claims of these two bodies to get rid the capital of the mounds of untreated legacy solid waste by December 2028. What is this legacy solid waste? These are the huge mounds of the solid waste which are lying on the barren land for the longer span of time. For example, we have the Gajipur landfill site, we have the Okhla landfill site. So these can be categorized as the legacy solid waste because they are lying there for a longer period of time. This particular topic pertains to syllabus of your GS paper 2, government policies and interventions, and syllabus of your GS paper 3, environmental pollution, conservation, degradation, etc. Okay. So let's try to look into some data. As per the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change, 62 million tons of waste is generated every year with an average annual growth rate of 4%. As per this data from Invest India, which is a wing under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, it says that municipal solid waste is expected to rise to 165 million tons by 2030. Which emphasizes on the point that first of all, we have to get rid of this legacy waste which is lying there. Second, we have to also buckle up for the upcoming challenge, that is increased waste generation that is going to happen in the upcoming times. As per this solid waste generation in India, that is per capita in grams per day, which is the data from the annual report on 2021 implementation of solid waste management rules 2016 by the Central Pollution Control Board. Some of the areas you can see that Delhi is one such area where we have such very high per capita in per gram day solid waste is there. Okay, means Delhi is one such area which is producing more gram per day of solid waste as compared to other areas or other states and the union territories of the India. Some data from the NGT, it says that the Delhi generates over 11,119 tons of garbage every year, of which 6,473 tons is dumped at landfills, 4,550 tons is sent to 3 waste energy plants, and the rest is composed. One is the Balswa landfill, second is the Okla landfill, and third is the Gazipur landfill. And this is the situation with the most of the municipalities, most of the major cities. Okay, and it is not only impacting the humans, that there is a case of with the more air pollution that is happening, people are having more respiratory disease. It is also impacting the environment because of these legacy wastes that are there. There is loss of biodiversity that is happening. It is also polluting the waters. Groundwater table is also being polluted or contaminated. There are lot of other issues which are arising due to this solid waste management, improper solid waste management. So what are the reasons for this rise in the urban waste? First is the rapid population growth. As per the United Nations, as of now in year 2023, there are 1.4 billion people that are living in India. And when we have such a high number of population, obviously they will be generating waste, and that will be really tough to address or to ensure that waste is being disposed sustainably. Apart from this 1.4 billion people that are part of India, some of the major cities are taking the pressure, are burdened with the majority of the population. For example, as per the World Population Review, around 34 million people are living in Delhi itself. When Delhi will have such a huge number of population, obviously it will create a issue of the sustainable disposal of the urban waste. For example, why so much of people are coming to Delhi itself is because of the pull factors as well as the push factors. Pull factors because Delhi or some other metropolitan cities have a good educational facilities, good employment opportunities. So people who will be coming to Delhi, they can get proper work with the help of which they can sustain. The push factors that in the rural areas, obviously they do not have any job. The agricultural productivity is declining. So they come to Delhi itself because of the lack of proper opportunities or in their home itself. And it is not only limited to Delhi itself. There are several other cities that are witnessing this. For example, Mumbai, etc. So this is leading to a case of urbanization, that more and more pressure is going to happen on the urban infrastructure, or we are witnessing an increase in the urban population. As per the UN 2023, as per the data from United Nations, 377 million people live in the urban areas of the India, and which is also witnessing a major shift from the rural to the urban areas. Then we have the poor implementation of the rules and the regulations. For example, we had this solid waste management rules 2016, which mandated the segregation of these waste at the initial stage itself. But that segregation is not happening properly. We have the wet waste as well as we have the biodegradable waste or non-biodegradable waste as well as the biodegradable waste. The solid waste management rules mandated that there should be segregation. But that is not happening. Obviously, when that will not happen, it will be very difficult in the collection itself, and obviously it will create difficulty in the disposal also. So, and it is not only limited to rural areas, even in the urban areas. For example, in Delhi itself, you can witness that how these norms are flouted. Or let's suppose we have the plastic waste management rules, which imposed a ban on the single-use plastic. But we can easily identify that availability of these single-use plastics in the market anywhere in the Delhi or other parts. We have the behavioral issues also, that people have lack of awareness, that they do not understand the importance of sustainable waste management. They do not understand the importance of turning or going towards more sustainable practices, that they can take up their cloth bag or something like that to the market itself, that can limit the use of the plastic waste itself. But that is not happening because of the awareness or because of this attitude of negligence towards the environmental cause. Then the consumerism and the disposable culture. For example, this Gen Z who are in most of the urban cities, who are using Swiggy and Zomato. Now most of the foods that are coming from these quick commerce food delivery apps, they are coming in the plastics itself, and they are just eating, and then they are just, instead of you keeping that for and selling that to any of kabadi wala or something like that, they are just throwing that in the dustbin, and then further it is going to that Gazipur landfill site or some other place. And this particular, when people have more purchasing power, to some extent some of the people are earning more, so instead of cooking food at the home itself, they are turning towards these websites. Or let's suppose in the earlier case, or the people who belongs to the rural areas, they will relate with the fact that in the earlier case, what was happening, whatever the things that we were taking from the market itself, whether it was the potato, whether it was the other vegetables, the vegetable vendor was keeping that in the one bag itself, and after coming to home, we were segregating that, then we were washing that properly. But that is not the case that is happening at this point of time. Everyone needs a separate plastic bag for all the vegetables that they are taking. Just imagine the number of plastics, it is increasing, and when it is not limited to few people or only limited set of people, it is the case with the most of the people, and that is further amplifying the cause of this urban waste generation. Also, the lack of infrastructure. We have the poor research and development, we have the poor investment in the technologies that can actually help in sustainably disposing the solid waste. And when we do not have proper technologies, obviously we will be leaving it to be untreated, or we will be unsustainably disposing. For example, in some of the countries, from the waste the compost is being generated, which is being used as a fertilizer itself. Some countries are shredding that, or with the help of some newer technologies, that is being used in the roads, etc. However, that use of these waste, etc. is being to a limited extent, that is being used in some of the road construction by NHAI, etc. But that is still at a very low level. So if we'll improve on the research and development, if we'll invest more, obviously that can help in increasing the sustainable disposal of urban waste. What are the various initiatives that has been taken by the government to ensure that urban waste is being treated and disposed sustainably? First is the Swachh Bharat mission, which came in 2014, which actually called for 100% sanitation coverage, scientific solid waste management. You can recall that there were proper dustbins that were placed at different places, especially in the municipal areas, especially in the bigger cities. Within few years span of time, all that dustbins just vanished. Then also the source segregation, that at the source itself the waste should be segregated, whether it is degradable, whether it is biodegradable. Door-to-door collections, although that is happening at this point of time itself, the people who are living in Delhi can relate that there is a collection car that comes in the morning itself with also a song that is playing in that particular van itself. Also the waste processing facilities that has been set up under this particular missions, and various other measures that has been taken under the Swachh Bharat mission. Then we have the plastic waste management rules that came in 2016, and it was amended in 2018, which banned the production, use and import of certain single-use plastics. It has promoted further alternatives like paper bags, etc. And it also emphasized the extended producer responsibility, that people who are producing these kind of plastics, they have a liability that they will be also recycling that, they will be also sustainably disposing or reusing that plastic. They will have to ensure that they are also producing that responsibly. Means although they are producing, but in another way they are also acquiring, they are also buying from the market, so that they can reuse that plastic, they can recycle that plastic. Also, we have the solid waste management rules, which provided guidelines for the municipal solid waste management, including collection, transportation, processing, disposal, and it emphasized on the public participation and the awareness. And it was more towards the behavioral change, that it is, see, at any point of time, obviously government is there to help, government is there to provide the services, but until and unless the people will take the charge, until and unless people will resort towards the sustainable practices, it will be very difficult to tackle this menace of the urban waste. Also, the waste to energy plants, which converts waste into energy, which reduce landfill waste and generate the renewable energy, that has been set up in various municipal corporations, various cities of India. Also, the circular economy is being promoted, which minimizes waste and focuses on reduce, reuse and recycle, and it maximizes the resource utilization through reuse, recycling and remanufacturing. That if there is a particular plastic which has been already disposed, that will come to the company, they will melt that, then they will try to mold that in another shape and that will be reused. Also, the Swachh Sarvekshan Abhiyan that was taken, the survey, Swachh Sarvekshan survey that was taken, it was accessing the performance of the urban local bodies across in India in terms of cleanliness, hygiene and the sanitation, and which actually helped in improving a sense of competition among these urban local bodies, and that has helped in improving the overall solid waste disposal condition of these urban local bodies and sustainable management of these urban waste in these bodies. Also, the national policy on the biofuels that came in 2018, which promotes the use of biofuels. It includes those derived from waste materials to reduce dependence on the fossil fuels and contribute to the cleaner environment. Already there has been blending of biofuels in the petrol, that ethanol blending has been mandated. So there has been many-fold increase in the government initiatives, but that will be more impactful and when the citizens take a proactive participation in them. So what are the possible solutions, or what is the way forward that we can follow? First is, there is need for strengthening the waste collection infrastructure, and because understand there is a process. First we have this collection, then we have this segregation, then we have this disposal that is happen. In the collection process, until and unless citizens will help properly, it is going to be very challenging to ensure that the sustainable, proper segregated collection is happening. So we need to strengthen the waste collection infrastructure. We need to provide proper capacity building and training to the on-ground workers, that they know that how they have to collect properly. Also, we need to encourage the public awareness and the participation, because until and unless people will participate, until and unless behavioral change will happen, until and unless people will resort to the sustainable alternatives, it will be very difficult to address this issue. Also, the sustainable alternatives can be promoted. For this, government is obviously can provide some capacity building and hand holding. For example, they can be given some tax exemptions or tax incentives can be provided, or they can be provided priority sector lending. Under the priority sector lending norms, they can be provided subsidized capital or better capital. All that can actually help in promoting the sustainable alternatives, because until and unless the cost of these sustainable alternatives will come down, it will be very difficult to shift from these unsustainable alternatives to sustainable alternatives. Also, there is need for implementing stricter regulation and the enforcement, that if there is a plastic waste management rule which is applicable, which is banning the single use plastic, how can we can see this availability of single use plastic at every vendor, at every shop, when we have such a huge workforce under these municipal corporations? Why are they not taking actions on this? Okay, so we need a proper oversight mechanism, and some punitive actions also can be taken on the offenders, so that we can address this problem in a time-bound manner. Also, we can strengthen this intersectoral collaboration, that all the sectors of economy, whether they are producing, whether they are only providing services, or whether the manufacturing, all the sectors, until and unless they will collaborate properly, that okay, the services sector is helping in the proper collection of this waste, then there is manufacturing sector or waste treatment plants which are using this by the help of this tertiary sector which has helped in collections, and then that particular waste that has came, that is being recycled and now it will be reused. Until and unless there is proper intersectoral collaboration with all the sectors of the economy, it will be very difficult to address this issue properly. So, and if there is a mains practice question that you people can write, that discuss the major reasons for rise in the urban waste in India and suggest some possible solutions to address the above issues. So in our simplified section, first topic is unpacking Israel-Hamas deal. This particular article has came in today's Indian Express page number 14, and this relates with your GS paper 2, effect of policies and politics of countries on India's interest. So as you would be knowing that Hamas-Israel conflict is going on since October 2023, and now this mediators in Doha, Qatar have agreed on a phased ceasefire deal in Gaza on the following terms, that it will happen in 3 phases. First, that in the 42-day first phase that will begin on Sunday, the Hamas will release 33 hostages and Israel will release 950 Palestinian detainees. What is Hamas? It is a militant Palestinian nationalist and Islamist movement which is dedicated to the establishment of an independent Islamic state in the historic Palestine. Then and it will include all those who have been detained since October 7, 2023. Then IDF will withdraw from the central Gaza and Net Zarim corridor, which is a 2 to 4 kilometer wide security clearing that it has created, cutting Gaza in half off to the Mediterranean and eventually from the Philadelphia corridor. What are these two? This is Gaza. Okay. This is Gaza and this is Net Zarim corridor, which has actually divided Gaza into 2 halves, and it has actually cut off it from the Philadelphia corridor, which is this corridor which borders with the Egypt, and this was one such border through which Gaza was getting supplies of the foods, fuels, etc., basic essentials they were getting from this Philadelphia corridor. When this Net Zarim corridor was made by this Israeli Defense Forces, this particular area could not access at even the basic things properly. So during this first phase, what will happen, that the IDF will withdraw from Net Zarim corridor, and then also the second phase will begin on negotiation for second phase will begin on 16th May after the ceasefire comes into effect, and it is expected to produce almost a full Israeli withdrawal from the strip and the release of all remaining hostages by Hamas in return for a yet to decided number of Palestinian detainees. That slowly and gradually they will release that whatever the Israeli hostages are there with the Hamas, they will release, and whatever the Israelis, the Hamas detainees are there with, or the Palestinian detainees are there with the Israel, they will also release that. And in the third phase, the border crossing will be reopened fully and a reconstruction will begin in the Gaza. Outgoing the United States President Joe Biden and the President-elect Donald Trump and the Qatar governments announced this ceasefire and hostage deal. And now this central cabinet of the Israel cabinet have passed this, and it doesn't need the vote of the Knesset, which is the unicameral legislature of the Israel itself. For example, in India we have a bicameral legislature, we have the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha, whereas in Israel we have this only one legislature which is called as Knesset. And also you have to understand one thing, that similarly, let's suppose in the LOC, if India declares a ceasefire, that the temporary peace on that border itself. So that doesn't need approval of the Lok Sabha or the Rajya Sabha or the parliament, but it will be taken by the decision will be taken by the cabinet, by the executive itself. And that is the same case that is happening with the Israel itself, that this decision of the ceasefire or the 3-phased negotiation that has been agreed upon, that will be passed by the cabinet and then it will be implemented. And also there has been the 2 important aspects which can have the far-reaching implication, that withdrawal from the Philadelphia corridor. This is the Philadelphia corridor, which can be called as the heart line of this Gaza Strip, because when this will be the presence of the Israelis will be on this Philadelphia corridor, then it will be very difficult for Gaza to get access, because this is when they will not allow the movement of goods and services across this corridor, that will create issues in the Gazas, and that will create issues like lack of medicine facilities, goods and services, essentials will not be able to reach to this Gaza. But after this discussion, that slowly and gradually the Israel will leave this Philadelphia corridor also. Also, the release of the prisoners, that Israel have a history of agreeing to the release of disproportionate large number of Palestinian prisoners in return for Israeli hostages. And for example, it released 4,700 Arabs in return for 6 Israelis only, which were held by the Palestinian Liberation Organization in 1983. So a larger number of prisoners from the Israelis will be released as compared to what will be released by the Hamas. Also, after 14 months of war, what does this agreement mean for Israel and Hamas? For Hamas, ceasefire is a victory with traditional organizations and leadership in dire state after the relentless and indiscriminate Israeli air and ground actions. Various leaders, for example, Sinsinewar, etc., who were the part of Hamas, they are dead. So it can be categorized as a sigh of relief for the Hamas. For Israel also, the ceasefire has come after it has weakened the Iranian axis significantly, which was allegedly supporting the Hamas, and killed Hamas leader whom it has long targeted. However, its declared objective of ejecting Hamas from the Gaza, that complete removal of Hamas from this Gaza, is still not fulfilled. And for the Netanyahu and his far right allies, this is a setback. This can be called as setback, because the right parties and the right allies of the government, their one of the main aim was to flush out the complete Hamas from this Gaza Strip. Also, for the mapping perspective, this is very important that you know the location of Israel, the countries which are bordering the Israel. Where is West Bank located? Where is Golan Heights located? Where is Gaza City located? What are the water bodies which are surrounding this? And this Philadelphia corridor and the Netazrim corridor. This can be asked in the prelims 2025 examination as a part of your mapping. Then our next topic is that cabinet okays the setting up of 8th pay commission. This particular topic has came in today's Indian Express page number 6, and this is related with GS paper 2 government policies and interventions. A year before the end of the 7th pay commission, the government has approved the setting up of 8th pay commission in 2026, and this decision was taken at a cabinet meeting which was chaired by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and the Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw informed that the chairman and the 2 members of the commissions will be appointed soon. And the cabinet decision on the 8th pay commission will improve the quality of life, and it will also give a boost to the consumption. What is the pay commission? It is a commission which is constituted by the central government approximately every 10 years to review and recommend the change in the pay structures of the government employees, as well as the employees who are part of the military, CAPFs, or who are the pensioners of the central government. As of now, nearly 50 lakh central government employees and 65 lakh pensioners will be getting benefits from the recommendations of the 8th pay commission. The 7th pay commission, it was constituted in year 2014, and the recommendation was implemented on January 1, 2016, and the term of this recommendations of the 7th pay commission are going to end on December 31, 2025. So that is the reason that this 8th pay commission has been constituted, at that chairperson and 2 members will be appointed soon, so that they can give their recommendation on due time, and all that there can be a decision that can be taken by the government on these recommendations of the 8th pay commission, that what are the provisions they actually want to implement of this recommendations of the 8th pay commission. And majorly, the commission recommends a formula for revising the dearness allowance and the dearness relief, which will impact the offset of the inflation. If there is a person who is earning 100 rupees in the year 2014, but in 2014 to 25 we have seen a significant increase in the inflation. So the commission will recommend that what should be the increase in the dearness allowance and dearness relief to offset the impact of the inflation. Also, there can be various other recommendations. For example, earlier the basic pay that is that the central government employees get, that was also revised by the recommendation of the 7th Pay Commission, and that has actually helped in improving a significant amount of earnings of the central government. And this recommendations of the pay commissions apply to central government, civil and military personnel, pensioners, etc. Employees of the PSUs and autonomous bodies are excluded from these recommendations, that whether that will not apply, that will not be applicable to them. And because PSUs employees follow a different pay scales which are specific to the organizations. People who have worked to any of the PSUs like Coal India or HAL, etc., they know that there is a different pay scale that is followed in each PSUs, and that is not limited to the pay structures of the central government. A very basic question that I want to ask to you people, that whatever the pensions that are provided to the judge of the High Court, retired judge of High Court, whatever the pensions that they get, are they charged or voted on the consolidated fund of the state government or on the consolidated fund of the union government? So you have to tell two things: are they charged or they voted? Second, whether it is on consolidated fund of the state or it is on the consolidated fund of the union government. And when the 8th Pay Commission will increase this payment, that will actually help in improving the quality of the life. For example, there is a employee of the central government. His spending on the education of his or her child, is spending on the health facilities, etc., can be improved if his or her income will increase. And that will also help in improving the demand, that is consumption in the economy, and which will impact the GDP also, because of the improved consumption demand, because of the improved consumption expenditure, because of the more production of the goods and services that will happen because of the increased demand of goods and services. Our next topic is about the Lokpal, which is India's first anti-corruption body, and this particular topic came on the Hindu page number 9, and this is related with your GS paper 3, transparency and accountability and statutory bodies. 12 years since the Lokpal Act was passed and 5 years after the Lokpal, country's first anti-corruption body, started to function, it has ordered investigation in just 24 cases and granted prosecution in 6 cases. That is the data from the Lokpal. And more important data is that nearly 90% of the complaints were rejected as they were not in the correct format. And as per this section 53 of Lokpal and Lokayukt Act 2013, a complaint can be entertained only if it is filed within a period of 7 years from the date of alleged offence. Some of the offences or the complaints that were reported to the Lokpal, they were not accepted because they were outside this purview, outside this 7 years time period. And also there has been delay in the appointment, that the Lokpal Act was already passed in 2013. The country's first Lokpal, Justice Pinaki Chandra Ghosh, was appointed on March 19, 2019 along with 8 other members. And Justice Ghosh moved out of office in May 2022 after turning 70. And Justice A.M. Khanwalkar, who retired Justice of the Supreme Court of India, this has been appointed at the second Lokpal of March 2024. And there are other issues which are plaguing the office of Lokpal. For example, still there are lot of vacancies in the office of Lokpal. And you will find it very interesting that after the appointment of Justice Pinaki Chandra Ghosh, for few months they were working from the Ashoka hotels. Few rooms were booked for the functioning of the office of Lokpal, and there was no dedicated office that was provided. After few months, they came out of from the Ashoka hotels. They have been moved from the Ashoka hotel to the dedicated permanent office. That says about the seriousness towards the Lokpal. The Lokpal is established in India to investigate and prosecute corruptions among the public official, and this office is originated in 1809 in Sweden, result of India Against Corruption movement, which was headed by the Mr. Anna Hazare. The Lokpal and Lokayukt bill was passed in 2013. Various provisions are there, that there is a provision of selection committee which will choose the Lokpal. Under this selection committee, we have the Prime Minister of India, the Speaker of Lok Sabha, Leader of Opposition in Lok Sabha, Chief Justice of India, and any eminent jurist who will be appointed by the President. The jurisdiction of the Act will lie that the Prime Minister will be under this jurisdiction, ministers, central ministers, the member of parliament, and the group A, B, C, D employees of the central government will be any complaints can be taken on them if there is a case against them. Also, the composition of the Lokpal is that there is a chairperson and maximum of 8 members, half of judicial and 50% belonging to SCs, STs, OBCs, minorities and the women. The superintendence of this act will that it has the power of superintendence and direct any investigative agency including the CBI for the cases referred to it by the Lokpal. Next topic is CBIC. That is Central Board of Indirect Taxes and the Customs. This particular topic relates with growth and development, and this has came in today's The Hindu, page number 11. What happened? The Delhi High Court has said that the value of gold permissible under the baggage rules for travelers coming from abroad to India will have to be re-looked by the CBIC, saying it appears to be completely not in tune with the current market value of the gold. For example, a woman, that what amount of gold that is permissible that they can bring from any outside territory, 40 gram, and amount is maximum 1 lakh rupees. Okay. Whereas for the men members, it is 20 gram and it is 50,000 worth of value. But the cost of gold have increased manifold. Okay, it is around 70,000 rupees per 10 gram, which will almost be 2,80,000 rupees. So if customs are imposing penalty on any person that he or she has breached this 1 lakh limit, okay, then they also have to see the cost of the gold. That is the point that was being emphasized on the Delhi court, that the rules that you have made, they are not in sync with the current gold prices. There is need for amendment in those rules. There is need for relooking those provisions, right? They have directed to the CBIC, because when this rule was made, at that point of time, the gram of gold with the price was in sync. Okay, it would be around 50,000. Okay, much more than that. It will be around 25,000 rupees per 10 gram. Then that it will come to 1 lakh rupees. But now it increased to 70,000. So there is a mismatch. If there is a person who is coming with the 40 gram of gold, there in the gram terms, that woman is following that permissible limit. But in the price terms, that is not being followed, because the cost of that 40 gram gold is 2,80,000 rupees. So CBIC is the apex authority which is responsible for administering indirect taxes and the custom duties in India, and it was established by Central Board of Revenues Act 1963, and it is under the Department of Revenue, Ministry of Finance. The mandate of this CBIC is to formulate policies, implement the laws and of the government of India, whether it is related to the indirect taxes like GST, etc., ensuring effective revenue collections and how the government's kitty can be further improved, trade facilitation in relation to customs, goods and services tax and other indirect taxes. Also, there is a mention of the green channel, okay, that it says that even small quantities of jewelry are being seized by the custom departments if the passenger is walking through the green channel. Okay, so there are 2 channels, especially if the person is coming from outside territory under the airport. One is green channel, another is the red channel. In the green channel, which is mainly for the passengers who are not having any dutiable or the prohibited goods. For example, they are not coming up with any endangered species. They are not bringing drugs, lice or any guns, etc., because those are the prohibited goods. If they are bringing any such prohibited goods, they have to come with the red channel. First of all, they have to show that if they are coming with any kind of drugs, are they for the medical purposes? Okay, do they have paid proper import duty and proper taxes? Do they have proper bills or not? So that is the green channel, that if the passenger is not having any dutiable, custom duty levying product or prohibited goods, he can come from the green channel. But again, checking may happen at that place also if there is a suspect on that. Okay, our next topic is the mapping of Gulf of Aden and Red Sea, and this has appeared in today's The Hindu, page number 8, and this relates with syllabus of your prelims mapping. The Minister of Defense, Mr. Rajnath Singh, was addressing an event which was organized to commemorate 2024 as the year of naval civilians, and in that particular address he said that the threats in the Gulf of Aden, Red Sea and in waters adjacent to the East African countries might increase the Indian Navy, and the Indian Navy is striving to boost its presence and keep the sea routes safe. That's said by the defense minister. Also, the minister said that India's economic prosperity is linked to maritime security. It is therefore necessary to protect our territorial waters, ensure freedom of navigation, and keep sea routes safe, especially the goods and services that are coming to India. For example, the 26/11 attacks that happened. Okay, attackers came through sea route itself. For example, the whatever the sea pirates, etc., piracy that is happening, especially in the Red Sea and other places, because of the impact of the Somalian pirates. That emphasizes on the point that there is need for a safe maritime. Now you have to look that this is Red Sea. Okay, what are the countries which are bordering? A very basic trick, that is yes, des, that is Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Eritrea, okay, Sudan, Egypt, okay, and Djibouti. That is your the countries which are bordering the Red Sea. Then the Gulf of Aden is being bordered by Yemen, Somalia, and Djibouti. Now you can see that there was a question that was asked in 2019 examination related to the various bordering countries along the various seas. That was all from today's Analyst. Thank you very much. I hope you all clear this examination in the first attempt itself, or in the attempt that you are going to take in 25 or the 26th year. All the best. Thank you.